Back in 2014, I was but a young sophomore in college and just starting out on YouTube when an indie horror game was going totally viral on the internet, and every big YouTuber and their mother was playing it. But not me. I was going to trailblaze my own path on YouTube. I was going to just play any viral gimmick game that came around. I was going to gain a following on YouTube based on my own character, and I was going to play whatever games I wanted to play. People were going to come to my channel not for the games I played, but because they liked me and my personality. I was never going to overact and give fake reactions to the games I was playing. Everything on my channel was going to be real, because that's who I am. Real. Oh, how naive I was back then. And now that once little gimmick indie game has burned through its 15 minutes of fame and transformed into an entire franchise of bigger budget games, books, merchandise, and even soaring among the Hollywood stars with massive names in the horror genre. Reflecting on how far I've come since starting this channel, and how much farther the Five Nights at Freddy's series has come since then, I thought it was finally time to give the series a shot and see if I misjudged this viral sensation, or if I was right all those years ago that it wouldn't have been for me. So let's start where it all began, with the original Five Nights at Freddy's. You guys know the score already for this game. Trapped in a cramped and messy office, you're given but one simple task: survive the week. Setting the mood immediately, you're instructed by a guy on the phone on the corporate employee terms of service and how the animatronics here are a little quirky. He explains they'll be walking around the place, and due to some small programming errors, they'll stuff you into an animatronic suit if they see you. And it turns out, you have no aspirations of being a furry, because Roxy and Vanny haven't been introduced yet at this point in the series, so you don't want to be stuffed into an animatronic. You'll have to watch them on the cameras and close the door if they get too close, but only if they get too close, so you can conserve power throughout the night. A simple introduction to a simple game, but there's beauty in that simplicity. In a short 3-minute phone call, you know everything you need to know. Tutorial? Done. Check the cameras, watch the animatronics. Atmosphere and tension? Done. These animatronics are gonna stuff me into a suit if they see me? Holy shit, I don't want that. And now that the call's been disconnected, you're left to your own devices, but the gameplay's intuitive. You got a giant door button labeled door, your camera control, a bunny on the left, a chick on the right, and why did the curtain just open in camera 1C? And where the hell did Freddy go? This basic gameplay loop escalates as you get better with the mechanics and the animatronics get more aggressive along with you. But it never really feels unfair, and if you do die, you can jump right back into the game with barely any progress lost, since the game is in these short, bite-sized chunks, with each night you're supposed to survive being only a few minutes. A truly wonderful atmosphere is created here, that as you feel helpless to stop these machines hunting you down, with nothing but a door in between you and them, a door that is slowly losing all power. A tension builds naturally that makes you jump at every small sound, and wishing that the lights would just stop buzzing and someone would shut the damn fan off. A well-balanced game here services its atmosphere and gives life to its tension by never letting the illusion be broken by frustration at the game mechanics. FNAF's graphics make you nostalgic for the long-past era of arcade restaurants and goofy animal mascots, while simultaneously giving nostalgia for old point-and-click adventure games with pseudo 2.5D graphics with the backgrounds and its well-crafted animatronic models that are just real enough to look good, but uncanny enough to be unsettling. These looks, alongside the brilliant sound design of the iconic jump scare noise, to the camera, to the doors, the ambient noises constantly filling the room, and the bizarre jingles and songs really give life to this game. Sprinkle on a dash of an alluring mystery. Remember when it was just a dash of mystery? Behind the story of this game, with ominous deaths and tragedy being teased behind subtle clues that can get you hooked into wanting more, while also keeping you just a little bit freaked out. Five Nights at Freddy's 1 truly is a masterclass of the horror game on a small indie budget. It's an indie darling if there ever was. I think this game deserves all the praise that it got and its rise to fame. It's fun, it's scary, it's interesting, and it's unique. And I admit, I was wrong to skip over this game just because it was popular, and I had a great time with it and a lot of fun. With that being said, though, let's check out the next game on our list. We already covered the basic mechanics and rules when we started our review of the first game, so I'll skip over that and get right into the review this time, because this game doesn't really build upon the mechanics of the first game in any meaningful way. It's fairly clear that Scott, the developer, wanted to drop the camera mechanic from the game, but ultimately he couldn't do it since the feature was so iconic to the game. So its role is reduced to complete irrelevance in gameplay, as animatronics showing on the camera means absolutely nothing and doesn't really give you enough info to be worthwhile even opening. You open the camera to wind the music box, which feels unintuitive, and the music box itself feels like it could have just been an equipment item sitting on the player's desk to simplify the controls rather than needing a separate menu to be accessed. This small but telling feature is a sign of things to come, as simple, smooth gameplay is left behind as we go on throughout the series. In addition to the music box is another piece of equipment, the flashlight. The camera, and by extension the music box, can't be accessed while the flashlight is in use, which begs the question why the music box and flashlight aren't interchangeable equipment items on the player's desk to just switch between. This would make for a smoother gameplay experience, much like the gameplay of the first game. This nerf to the camera and replacement by a focus on these two essential equipment mechanics hurts the interactivity of the game, as you become reduced to winding up the music box while spamming the flashlight in between cranks instead of monitoring any rooms or keeping track of any animatronics. You know, the whole concept of the original game. If the music box ever quiets, it's a game over, and if you don't flash Foxy in the hallway, you guessed it, a game over. Essentially, the game becomes a simple flowchart of, is Foxy in the hallway? If no, wind the music box. If yes, flash the flashlight, then wind the music box. Winding this very music box also comes with a lesson in dread because of the newly introduced withered animatronics. The wizards require a near esport level of reaction time. As soon as they appear, you need to throw on a mask, which is the third equipment item the player needs to utilize, by the way. You need to do this every time they appear, in less than a second and a half, or it's game over, which is a rather unfun reaction-based mechanic in a game that was previously based on your game sense or understanding of the animatronic's telegraphed functions and movements. To the inexperienced player, the wizards seem nearly random and will not appear in a trackable pattern on the camera, further discouraging its use altogether as anything other than the music box menu. With the wizards being introduced, you'll also get Balloon Boy, Mangle, and Toy Bonnie and Chica, who are largely not trackable on the camera either, and if you can see them on the vent camera angles, you can already see them in the corners of your vision of the office. You'll also need to mask up for them too, or it's game over. Although they have a more reasonable reaction time threshold, why all animatronics don't share this reaction time threshold is beyond any logical reason. The sound design that in the previous title invoked tension and suspense now largely provides white noise at best and an annoyance to the player at worst, in a way that once you're conscious of it, like how you're aware you're breathing right now, the sound is distracting in a bad way. You'll spend 90% of the game listening to these two noises that will grate on you and completely evaporate any tension in the room, as you wonder, should you really just let Mangle get you so you don't have to hear his fucking mouth breathing anymore? FNAF 2 is where the franchise starts to really expand on the lore behind what is going on in the story of the games. It offers rare chances to encounter mini-games when you fail to succeed a night in the game. Upon reflection, this is a bad omen that the game expects you to fail a lot and feels the need to add in a small game to break up the pace of your failures. Admittedly, getting to this game way after the fact removes a bit of the magic behind these mini-games. I'm sure when the game first launched, it created this big ARG-like movement in the community where people were trying to figure out what was going on in these cryptic games. The rarity of them, I'm sure, is what helped create some of the popularity of theory crafting in the game, and prolonged how long it took to figure the mysteries out. But years later, now that the mysteries have mostly been solved, they now stick out a bit and feel like they need some quality of life improvements. Like, why aren't they skippable? With the story and mystery removed, they aren't any fun to play on their own. Why don't they unlock in a minigame menu that you can access from the main menu? They really feel like relics of the time and a product of the hype of the mystery, and much less of a good feature of the game in a retrospective playthrough. This game can be fun for a short while, but once you start figuring out the mechanics behind what's going on, the game can quickly turn into a grind that becomes unfun once the withered animatronics enter the picture. All in all, FNAF 2 is okay, but fails to capture the magic of the first game. It feels like it wanted to step away from the same gameplay of FNAF 1, but was too afraid to make the jump and lose what made it special, so it ends up in an awkward middle ground of it's not too similar to the first, but it has underdeveloped new mechanics that overcomplicate, frustrate, and take away from the subtlety of the atmosphere and simplicity of the gameplay that made the first one so good. Now, remember at the beginning of this review, where I said adding menus as a feature to the game was a sign of things to come for the franchise? Well, let's take a look at the next game in the series so you can get an idea of what I'm talking about. Five Nights at Freddy's 3 looks, feels, and plays like a YouTube Let's Play collaboration. Between the constantly repeating jump scares that completely remove any sense of tension and actual jumping from the scares, to the obscure game mechanics to give YouTubers more replayability. This was definitely when the series was leaning the most into relying on Let's Players and streamers to pump up the advertising and marketing, as well as even doing the QA testing for the games. While conceptually this game does go back to basics with a central focus on the camera for gameplay, visually this game is a cluttered mess. Every camera shot is a dark and obscure looking room, and you're supposed to be able to spot Springtrap, the sole game over condition mind you, in the tiniest and least lit spots of the frame. The lack of visual clarity causes a strain for the eyes as you squint to just try and get the smallest glimpse of the guy who can automatically kill you. The core mechanic of how you interact with him is an audio lure device you play into the camera, which has no real feedback to the player on if it actually worked on Springtrap or not. The lure can just sometimes not work at all. Combined with the lack of feedback, it isn't satisfying as a gameplay element. You don't feel like you ever outsmarted or outmaneuvered Springtrap, and can just feel like you had a good or bad run of luck, creating this feeling where you're just along for the ride rather than in the driver's seat of the game you're playing. I know that skilled players of the game can really break down its AI and behaviors, but to a casual player, this game is not really approachable. And if you aren't putting on a show for viewers that you just are so terrified of the obnoxious level of jump scares, even after you see them for the first time or two, there really isn't much here gameplay-wise. It's nice that we get a return to form with the camera-centric gameplay, but it's rendered ineffective with no real defense or moves to make against Springtrap as reliable as just closing the door in his face. You end up either staring at the power reset panel, which is essentially a settings menu imported into gameplay, or try to stare at Springtrap and hope and pray he got baited by your audio lure, with a smidge of the YouTuber performance phase, where you get to have a staring contest with Springtrap. That also just doesn't make sense, because now that he's seen you, why wouldn't he just kill you? Unless he also knows he needs to put on a good show for the viewer. The audio doesn't really do much lifting in this game either. While it's not as bad as FNAF 2, Springtrap's sounds are rather faint and boring. A lot of the ambiance and mood can be sapped away at a moment's notice with the alarms going off because ventilation is broken down again, or another animatronic phantom has decided to play a little prank on you. It kind of creates this constant barrage of meaningless sounds and effects that lead to the player getting desensitized really fast, and then they're just left to focus on the gameplay. And as compelling as staring at the settings menu, the power menu is, it just isn't enough. The drab yellow of the backgrounds, combined with the mostly obscure camera views, tries to put this spooky and scary vibe on the forefront, but it ends up with the opposite effect, as it contributes to just wearing down the player's sensitivities, and it leaves little to the imagination. While the minigames do get the quality of life treatment they needed to get in FNAF 2, because this time around they can be manually triggered by the player and played at will, much like the rest of this game, they aren't really that fun, and it would be better if you just watched them be played by a Let's Player or a streamer like this game was designed around being viewed in the first place. Now, my thoughts on FNAF 4 are rather complicated. As a lot of my subscribers may already know from my playthroughs of Metal Hellsinger and Hi-Fi Rush, I struggle to really identify and differentiate noises and beats. Basically, I'm a little tone deaf, so don't expect any anime soundtrack covers from me anytime soon. I heard one ambient noise, it sounds just like the last one. Is someone breathing? Is it the wind moving? No, they're both air moving around, so close enough. This feels important to address at the beginning of this FNAF 4 review, because this game is primarily audio-based in its gameplay mechanics. Now, as soon as I say that, even I can hear the die-hard FNAF fans typing on the keyboard right now. But Cubi, you can beat this game without any sound. And that's true. All you have to do is set up a timer and memorize the movement patterns of every animatronic, their behaviors, their reactions, their specific timings, and their mechanics. So, not really something you're going to do on a one-and-done blind playthrough without some consistent practice and research. I will say, I do find the idea of an audio-based horror game interesting and unique, as most horror games usually use audio as something to set the mood, the ambiance, or provide suspense and tension to the player. It's rarely ever used as a core mechanic, and I think this game sort of gives an excellent case study on why it's never really used in that way. Because when the audio becomes the key mechanic of your game, the player is forced to actively engage with that mechanic. And while that's great for a rhythm-based game like Hi-Fi Rush, in a horror game like FNAF, it really prevents the sound design from being able to provide the tension and suspense a horror game truly relies on at a base level. When you're constantly aware of and focusing on the noise, it isn't something that can make you uneasy at a subconscious level anymore. It becomes just another mechanic you're interacting with as a player, and that really detracts from the mood and atmosphere when you're already limited to one room and you aren't really exploring around. I don't have too much else to say about this game, as I wasn't really able to progress that far into it. I hope you said your goodbyes to the camera in FNAF 3, as Scott finally went through with his plans from FNAF 2 to just get rid of it entirely, and I hope you enjoy just kind of guessing where the animatronics might be. I think the concept of an interesting audio-based game is here, but I don't feel it really sticks the landing. In my opinion, the audio cues need to be a bit more distinct to be effective, or maybe paired with some player narration, like Gregory does in Security Breach. It's not like the franchise hasn't shown us before that loud and distinct noises can be unsettling and scary, so I wish that FNAF 4 wasn't afraid to stick to that kind of audio commitment. The lore of this game being that a psycho killer is experimenting on you with a scarecrow-like fear gas is pretty wild though, and in most other franchises that would probably be a jumping the shark moment. It really sets the stage for the story being told behind the scenes in these games to kind of go wild. And at this point, I think lore, story, and mystery are the best things these games really have to offer. Though it is a shame they don't really like to put that much in the game themselves, and take the Halo route of putting most of the info in books for some reason. Hopefully now that the series has a bigger budget, we can get some exposition cutscenes rather than some lame minigames. Though with Security Breach not really explaining itself all that well either, I won't be holding my breath, and will instead get ready to listen to some audiobooks. Man, what a great Audible sponsorship segue this would be, if I was ever fucking sponsored. Anyway. Sorry to spoil the review here, but in my opinion, out of the first 5 games in the series, this one is the worst. You spend a large majority of this game staring at a black screen while some girl talks directly into your ear on some Kingdom Hearts level dialogue that unless you're knee-deep into the lore, you can't help but stop and just go, what the hell are you talking about? So, with that being said, I'll do the review of this game a little bit differently than the others. We're going to try out 5 different review styles in one video to see which one fits, as I'm just going to talk about the game play by play and let it speak for itself. You get to start the game off in an elevator ride, and there's a Portal-esque narrator now for some reason. Granted, he's funny for a couple jokes, and it did make me want to play Portal again. He even tries to match the classic Portal, "There will be cake," with his own, "May I offer you an exotic butter in this trying time?" which is cute. It's nice that another character exists in this game, not just for the lore, but to help things feel more alive. Sister Location is the first game in the series to try and really give the player full control of the character and your movement. But the irony being, you really just move in a straight line forward most of the time, so it isn't even particularly necessary to be able to move. You have to hold down W during Bellora's FNAF 4 if they brought back the music box game, Foxy's epilepsy test, and during Circus Baby's game of red light, green light. But these could really just be accomplished with a timed button press to leap forward instead of walking. Though, I suppose just holding down W is kind of a button press. My witty renaming of the tasks in this game aside, the tasks are truly their most boring in this game, perfectly complemented by its empty black screens for you to stare at. Bellora's task is just FNAF 4's audio check, where you have to move forward in a nearly pitch black room while listening to the music box play. This isn't really engaging at all. It doesn't improve upon FNAF 4's version of this gameplay, takes no advantage of your newfound movement ability, and the lighting makes this boring and not scary, with no dynamic lighting in this room. So you can't even really see Bellora or the environment, and you don't even get environmental storytelling here. It's a snore fest through and through. Your reward at the end of this blank hallway is Freddy's task, where the camera has now been reduced to just the camera panel and no function. You get to just stare at the panel, reflect on FNAF 3 and its power panel, and all the good times you used to have using the camera, while the black silhouette of Freddy is kind of coming towards you, but not really. You can never tell, because this room is pitch black as well, and Freddy isn't animated. His position just changes to different static locations. I missed a task, actually, on accident while writing this script, because the gameplay of it was so forgettable, and I want you to comment below if you noticed I skipped past it before I mention it right now. Pause the video, and think, what did I miss? It's that random-ass baby, and its task is literally just staring at a light gray wall in a black room while holding down the mouse button. Exciting stuff. How could I forget? Next is Foxy's task, and it's exactly like Bellora's game, except now instead of listening to sound, you're flashing a strobe light in the same pitch black hallway, and stopping if you see Foxy in between flashbanging yourself. Still, no more complex movement other than holding W, and still, no fun. You get another Freddy game after this, and it's I Spy, but with small buttons, and you have to catch a shy bunny. This room is also a black void, except for Freddy and the bunny. Snooze. The infamous Springlock suit game is next, and you're staring off into another empty black void while playing the most mentally draining task in all of FNAF. Even patched, this is both ridiculously hard and incredibly tedious between all the constant clicking noises and the literal clicking you have to do on the suit. This was my moment in FNAF, where I stared into the abyss, and the abyss stared back. Now, I had mostly checked out of the game at this point, but after hacking directly into the Matrix to get past Glitch Trap himself, and I used the time-traveling ball pit to leap forward in time one singular night in the FNAF timeline, we end up back in another dark room with the circus baby playing I Spy again with some number crunching before walking down a third completely black hallway while just listening to Siri give us directions to the end of the hallway since it's so dark you can't see. She ends up leading us directly into mercifully ending our lives to save us from having to play this anymore. There's also a Mario-style side-scrolling platformer minigame thing where you force-feed children until they put on a fake smile in a desperate attempt to make you stop, while the video game equivalent of the ice cream truck music blasts at you non-stop. Hooray. If you're willing to make it past all that there is to do in this game and unlock all of the secrets, there's a 6th and custom night option where you can play just a remade and tweaked version of the significantly better game, FNAF 1. But in fact, you should just play FNAF 1 again instead of this. I award this game 0 points, and may MatPat have mercy on its soul. And there we have it. That's the first episode of Cubi Reviews. Better name pending. I'm not really great at naming stuff, as you guys could probably assume from the channel being named Cubi in the first place, but I'm hoping this is something I can do a bit more of. A lot of you might be familiar with that at the end of every game that I beat on stream, I do like an off-the-cuff review of my immediate thoughts on the game, and I'd like to kind of make some videos here and there about some games that I play a little bit more in depth, and like really script out, kind of go over through all of my thoughts of the game and really kind of break down how I feel rather than just the immediate like after effect of beating the game, and kind of really give some deeper analysis of some of these games and how I think. I played enough games on the channel now, and I've always kind of wanted to do this review thing, so hopefully it's something that you guys are interested in. I want to try getting back into making pre-recorded and edited content on the channel instead of just streaming games, so this is my first attempt at that, and making game reviews is something I've always wanted to try out, but never really had the confidence or the willingness to sit down and script something out. So, I hope you guys give this different kind of content a chance on the channel, as it's something I'm excited to try out. Future episodes will probably be a little bit shorter, more focused on a singular game, but to start off, I figured we gotta go big for the whole first attempt. I'm sure there's a lot of different things that I need to learn on improving when making this kind of video, but it's still my first shot at it, so I'd love your feedback in the comments on different segments of the video. I'd like to hear out any suggestions you guys have for specifically critiques to the type of video, the editing, my writing, something like that, instead of like future games to review, because I'll probably only do these types of review format videos for games that I'm like really passionate about, so that I can really get out my whole thoughts. But yeah, if you want to see more commentary, gameplay bits, or make it less serious with more jokes, whatever, feel free to make that comment below. Or, of course, you can hit me up on Discord. My link to the server is in the description of the video below. If you want to click that, join it, and give me some feedback there too. Whichever way works for you is great for me. Until next time, subscribe for more videos like this, more game streams, more edited content, whatever I decide to make. And don't miss out. Drop a like on the video if you can, I'd appreciate that. And I appreciate you for watching. See you next time.